Today we are looking at Chapter 3, Section 2 on classifying matter. We're taking matter and we're trying to put them into categories. The two main questions that we need to unlock today is what is matter made of and what are the two types of mixtures. Those are the two questions that you need to be able to answer by the time you are done reading and watching this video. So as we go through what matter is made of, I want to point out that scientists now know that all matter in the universe is made up of over 100 different substances called elements. We use the word element to basically talk about the purest substance, the simplest substance. This is what we call a periodic table. A periodic table is full of elements. Each one of these squares represent an element, and we may or may not get to what each one is, depending on the time, but a periodic chart is full of these different elements. They are the pure substances that everything is made up of. You can see here that the element C, carbon, or oxygen, or calcium. So we're breaking down all matter into these specific things called elements. Now, when you go to the next page, we get even smaller with this, that each one of those elements is basically made up of an atom. A atom is we're going to talk about three major parts to an atom: a proton, a neutron, and an electron. So I'm going to bring up this picture. Inside here, this is the nucleus, and here we have the positive protons, and we have a neutral neutrons that make up the nucleus. Going around it, making a shell, are the electrons. The electrons are what are going to later, when we talk about chemical bonds, the electrons, this outer shell, are what causes these atoms to connect. So this is an atom. This is the basic, and each element is different by the number of neutrons and protons and electrons. A hydrogen atom would have just one proton and one electron out here, and sometimes one neutron. So that would be the difference between that and an element like this that would have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So if we go to the periodic chart, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, this would be a nitrogen element. So you're looking at nitrogen here instead of helium. All right, now if we go back to our text, these atoms can form bonds like we just talked about through the electrons. And when they chemically bond together, they're going to form molecules. All right, so an atom is a basic unit. When these atoms bond together, they form molecules. So if we come down here, carbon, hydrogen, oxygen, and nitrogen are all atoms. They are all basic elements. So this would be a carbon dioxide molecule. And so if we look here, we would have one carbon atom and two oxygen atoms. Here, water, H2O. We have two hydrogen atoms, one oxygen making up that molecule. Oxygen, we call it diatomic because oxygen doesn't like to be by itself, so it bonds to another one. So this is O2. That's why we have oxygen. The chemical formula is O2. And then here, ammonia is one nitrogen and three hydrogen. So these all are molecules because they have bonded atoms together. Now, these molecules can even we can form compounds by even combining two or more elements or even molecules together. In this case, we have copper, which would look like this. You've seen copper pipes, and sulfur, which is this yellow stinky stuff. And when you put those two together, we form a compound of copper sulfide. Okay? Here, they talk about it in the text, that if you would take carbon and put it together with oxygen, you get carbon dioxide. And this is the chemical formula. When you write a compound, you put it into a chemical formula. You can even go down here a little bit farther and you can see this is the chemical formula for oxygen, or I mean for water, sorry. You take oxygen and two hydrogen and you form water. Here, notice it's just a little different. Two hydrogen and two oxygen. This is hydrogen peroxide. This is the stuff that your mommy puts on your boo-boo that bubbles up when it's dirty. Hydrogen peroxide. So these are chemical formulas. So we can form compounds and we can write those, all of these in chemical formulas. So when we go back and we try to answer the question, what is matter made of? We know that matter is made up of elements, and even more simpler, those elements can be broken down, those elements are made of atoms, and we can make those into molecules, compounds, and we can write those molecules and compounds in chemical formulas. The second question that we asked are what are the two types of mixtures? Well, there are two types of mixtures that we're going to talk about, and these sometimes can be hard to pronounce, but if you look at the pronunciation, this is heterogeneous mixtures. Heterogeneous mixtures usually contain things that can be separated. For example, if I would give you a salad, and I give you this, and you have lettuce and tomatoes and onions and other things that are in there, and I said pick out the onions, you could do that even though that they're mixed together. That is a heterogeneous mixture. Sand particles, those kind of things can be separated out. When we look at the word homogeneous means that these things have been so mixed together that you are not going to be able to easily separate them. All right, so that they are a little more difficult. If you look at this, honey here is going to be homogeneous. You're not going to be able to separate out things very well. Here in the guacamole, you can see these particles here, so this would be heterogeneous. The soy sauce, this is homogeneous. Okay, so if we go over here to the next page, we're talking about separating mixtures out. Maybe they're really small, maybe it's homogeneous, and you've got to figure out a way to separate it anyways. Or maybe it's heterogeneous. See here, they're using a magnet. You had iron mixed in with this, and we know that that is attracted. Metal is attracted to magnets, and so they used a magnet to break out and separate these things. So he's using magnetism. That would probably be of a heterogeneous. Here you have salt water. If you let the water evaporate or evaporation, then what's going to be left is the salt. You're separating it out. Here they're using a filter. They're pouring in a liquid into this filter. The water is being mixed out, and what all of the salt or all of the sulfur and all of the solid is left here. We're separating it. This contraption here is called a distill, or a distillation. We're using heat. This solution is being heated so hot that it starts to boil. When it starts to boil, it turns the liquid into a steam or a vapor, which then rises. It then goes down and cools and turns into a water. And so now we have the liquid that is running off, and any solid would be left here in the bottom of this container here. So these are some different ways that you can separate here using magnetism. Here you've got filtration, or a filter. You can distill it, or distillation. And here is evaporation. So the question that we started off with what are the two types of mixtures? You should know that there is a heterogeneous mixture, which is a mixture that can be broken out easily because the parts are probably a little bigger, easy to see. The homogeneous mixture, which they are so small that maybe you have to use some of these different types of separation in order to do so.